What if you can add years to your life expectancy with no crazy protocols,
111 supplements,
no overpriced pills, or freezing ice baths? Medical studies show that book readers live longer than non-readers, and the gap in mortality is quite shocking. And besides the health benefits, reading can also completely change your life circumstances, putting you and your future kids in a completely different life trajectory. I know it because it changed mine from living in North Africa with little opportunity to having a fulfilling career today and traveling the world. So in this video, I want to share the 3 ways that I use to reprogram my brain completely from hating the shit out of books just 6 years ago to reading more than 50 books per year today in a highly distracting digital era. And since I'm obsessed with old books today, I'm gonna take you with me in my quest for the best old bookstores in Paris. So why do non-readers live shorter lives? Reading books actually involves 2 cognitive processes that create a survival advantage. The first one is deep reading, which is a slow, immersive process. This cognitive engagement occurs as the reader draws connections to other parts of the material or while finding applications to the outside world. And second is a cognitive process that promotes empathy, social perception, and emotional intelligence. Both of these cognitive processes led to a gap of 2 years in life expectancy between readers and non-readers. And that is huge. People today try the craziest things just to live a few years longer. So that's one way that reading can directly impact your life. Now, what about the indirect way? Personally, when I looked at prominent people that I admired, like Nassim Taleb or Charlie Munger, Robert Greene, or philosophers that I admired like Machiavelli or Montaigne, they all had one thing in common. They were voracious readers. They're true erudites and they started really young, which really impacted their life trajectory. Having a serious reading habit at a very young age is a huge advantage. Personally, I hated books for most of my life. As a teenager, you couldn't pay me enough to stop playing GTA and pick up a book. And that stayed the case until my early 20s. Besides required reading from school, I didn't really read much in my free time. But how did my disdain for reading turn into an obsession with books today? I'm out to do my regular book shopping and I'm on the hunt for 2 specific old books, and yeah, I'm gonna see if they're available. We're here in one of my favorite libraries in Paris, one of the oldest ones as well, Galignani. It was actually founded by a Venetian editor from 200 years ago. Let's see if they are available here. Every time I'm in this specific bookstore, I just realize how many great books there are, how many I still didn't read, and if I'd be able to read them before I die. To understand really how this change happened, we have to go back to Morocco. I was 22 years old, living at my parents' house, and I was still in college. And my life situation was probably the same for like straight 10 years. Staying in the same city, same neighborhood, same friends. And my biggest fear was to be at 27 years old, still living at my parents' house, and just be a freaking loser. I felt this nagging emptiness, which was a signal to get my shit together. And that's when I decided that I wanted to move abroad. I looked at different countries and France was an option. I thought, why not Paris? Always looked attractive to me. I never visited the city, so it was really outside of my comfort zone. I was like, hey, I'm a native French speaker. I can make this work. As a Moroccan, you can't just pick up your suitcase and leave. To be qualified to move to France, you need a solid opportunity to study, work, or intern there. So I really needed to work hard to seize an opportunity that will help me move to France. And that goal is what pushed me to reading. And that's the first lesson I learned, which is fill up your downtime. Today, I'm extremely busy. I have a highly demanding profession, managing a global team. I have at least 1 trip per month, somewhere in Europe or in the US. At night, I work on my YouTube channel. I also find the time to work out and dance. But this year, I managed to read more books than ever. How? I understood one thing: always have a book with you. When I initially started reading like 6 years ago, I didn't know if I was going to be able to stick to the habit. So I committed to read at least 10 pages every day, anywhere. And since then, I almost never skipped a day. But the key was to have a book with me all the time. In the train, while waiting for someone in a cafe. If I couldn't carry a book, I had an audiobook. And I've read 20-ish books that first year just by filling up this downtime. Because that downtime is easily taken over by mindless scrolling on social media. And I was really serious. I was aware of how much time I wasted by not reading, and all the knowledge I was missing. I had to catch up, and I had to fight against all these forces that were fighting for my attention, whether it's Netflix or Instagram or Twitter or the news outlets. Each one of them wanted my eyeballs so bad, but I just stayed on track. I started reading psychology, personal growth books, and philosophy, and I really enjoyed it. I realized that all these years, I didn't hate books. I just hated being told what to read. And little by little, I had examples and practical wisdom to apply that will help me towards my goal of moving to Paris. It was really extremely tough. I almost gave up multiple times. But the texts I was reading were keeping me in check. Reading these books was like having a conversation with these authors. And by early 2018, almost at the last minute, I succeeded in seizing an opportunity to move to Paris to intern. And further than that, the company I interned for offered also to pay for my degree in a top business school in Paris. And those outcomes were really correlated to my reading habit. Within months, I was a completely different person. So when seeing all that upside on my life, that habit of reading really stuck. Next stop, Smith & Son. So this is more of a modern library. More new books than old books, but I still read some new books. Going in here to see if there's anything I can cop from my book shopping. Nothing interesting in this bookstore, so we're gonna leave. Let's go to the next stop. So seeing the impact of reading on my life, it just pushed me to read even more. I developed this thirst for knowledge. But like anything in life, it came with a flip side. If you ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know it's just a fancy name that psychologists came up with to describe how biased we are in overestimating our abilities and knowledge. We think we know a lot when we know a little, and we actually feel happier when we're dumber. Yeah, there is a certain naivete that comes with ignorance. But the more you read books, and I'm not talking about like pseudoscience, woo-woo, wishful thinking books, but books that help you see the world clearly. Difficult books that teach you about the reality of the human condition, our cognitive biases, and how the world works. The more you read, the more you become inquisitive and introspective, but also the more insecure you feel. And that brings me to the second point: go deep and broad. The deeper you go within a subject matter, the better. But also, the broader you go, the more connections you can make between different disciplines. Me working in business and sales, I learned a lot about my profession, not only when reading about business and sales, but by reading about psychology, evolutionary psychology, economics, philosophy, or even military strategy. And the more I've read, the less delusional I've become. While reading great books, we start to see how really random and uncertain this world is. How much we don't understand about the world. My life goal is to be a hyper-realist, which is perceiving reality as clearly as possible. I don't want to fit the world to fit my own biased perception. So my goal is to shed the lights on any blind spots I have. But that cannot come without reading. The less you read, the more blind spots you will have. Of course, our own real-life experiences help. But the goal is to not repeat the same mistakes that great thinkers made and documented in their books. Great thinkers and perennial books make you accept the limitations of your own knowledge. And that's when I actually understood what Socrates meant by awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. The problem is, we think that blog posts or TLDR articles or podcasts are great mediums of transmission of knowledge. Maybe you'll find some nuggets here and there, but you can't compare them with books, especially old books that have been filtered, distilled, and survived for centuries or even millennia. Which brings me to the third lesson: seek old books. Next up is the Shakespeare & Co., one of the most famous libraries in Paris, if not the most famous. Unfortunately, I cannot take videos inside, cannot take in my camera. They sell very rare and old books, so might be a paradise for me. So let's see if the hunt is productive. Didn't really find what I was looking for, so yeah. Succeeded in getting one book, which is Karl Popper, The Open Society and Its Enemies. So adding into all the books I'm reading or rereading, Looking forward to it. Books are not created equal. Just because a new crisp book with a very flashy, attractive cover is on the New York Times best-selling list doesn't mean you should read it. Trust me, I know how the book industry works because I worked for a year as a book agent for Jay Samit, best-selling author. He shared a lot with me on how this industry really works. A lot of books on these best-selling books are there because of marketing, hype, and promotion. And usually, they don't survive that long after the hype dies out. That's when I learned about a very interesting phenomenon, the Lindy effect. Some ideas and books we read today are very old, hundreds or even thousands of years old. They survived for so long and they're still as relevant today. The Lindy effect has been popularized by the great thinker Nassim Taleb, and it just means that the longer a technology, a book, or an idea survives, the longer its remaining life expectancy. Which means that a book that survives for, let's say, 100 years, its future life expectancy, in contrast to humans, will increase and will be another 100 years. It means they're robust to change and competition. It's a Darwinian process. So that means that books that are still around after hundreds of years or thousands of years, it means they're more valuable. So that's what pushed me to read more old books today than new ones. Whether it's the essays by Montaigne or Niccolo Machiavelli or the great Marcus Aurelius, I just realized that even though the world changed so much and we have new technology, human nature didn't change that much. While reading these old texts, you just realize we still have the same desires, same emotions, and the same vices. Our brains still have the same biases, and we're still making the same dumb decisions. Charlie Munger said, "In my whole life, I have known no wise people who didn't read all the time." And I couldn't agree more. Reading is not optional. It's existential. If you like this video, you're gonna like this one too. I put a lot of work on each video, so I think you enjoy it.